All right, everybody, welcome back to the Iron Realm Media. I am Josh Corey. We are here again with everybody else from the Iron Realm. Walt, James, Rob, John, Adam, we're all here. We are joined today by Billy Ray Valentine of the Infinite Fringe podcast. Billy Ray, how you doing?
What's going on, everybody out in Flat Earth Land, man? It's me, it's Billy Ray Valentine. I'm honored and privileged to be sharing your airwaves with all you fine gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to have you.
Yeah, you're all welcome.
Well, great. That's
we had a
awesome.
blast on your show when you had Josh and I on, so we definitely wanted to return the favor. And we know you have just a wealth and depth of knowledge that we could dig into. So, I mean, literally, the plane is yours, sir. You take off in any direction you'd like to.
Hey, listen, man. So, I mean, I'm on a Flat Earth show. So, quite frankly, I mean, I remember reaching out to you guys and wanting to know about the Flat Earth and wanting to spread the message to my audience about the Flat Earth. And it was hard to find someone to come on and talk about it. But you guys were gracious enough to do it. And that's what I want to do. I want to talk about the Flat Earth. I know you guys do it all the time, but regardless of that,
no, that's fine.
I mean, we can get off into whatever you want later also. But what I really want to talk about, and I know you guys do a huge show, meaning lengthwise, so you may have touched on it already, or I'm sure you've touched on it many, many times, but refresh my memory. This wall in Antarctica, that's the thing that fascinates me the most. And it's the question that I got from the people that listen to my show. Everybody hit me up. They're like, what are you talking about, a wall in Antarctica? Hold on for a second, man. What are you talking about, a wall in Antarctica? What is that? What is that? Like, is there another world on the other side of it? Like, and I really couldn't really explain. I'm like, well, theory is that it's there, and there might be something on the other side, So, I mean, tell me about that. I think that's just super fascinating, if true.
It really is, and that's one of those
interesting
things.
Enough,
Go ahead, John. I was going to say that's one of those things that have kind of popped up recently in the news. Again, is Antarctica, and even in conspiracy world, because it's been in the news recently as to what's been going on in the Antarctica.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly is going on?
Well, I think the honest answer is nobody knows. Well, some people know, but nobody's letting the information out there. A few people know, but for the rest of us, it is a mystery, and that leads to ponderance, doesn't it?
I think you're right, Adam. I think it's for anyone that wants to. For anyone that swallowed all the bullshit for their entire lives and has just realized that it's all bullshit, the last thing they want to do right now is believe anyone about anything. So this is where I'm coming from a zetetic sort of point of view, an empirical point of view, is that I don't even know if Antarctica exists because I haven't been there. I don't know anyone on this panel that's been there. So it's almost impossible to talk about, but great to speculate about, that's for sure.
I think that's the point. I don't think anybody can, or very few, and certainly it's not available for the masses to verify the existence of either the ice wall or Antarctica as it exists. I mean, is it something like the 65th southern parallel where the exclusion zone starts? I mean, that leaves quite a big distance.
That being said, part of what we do is speculate with this knowledge that we gather from Zeticism, because if we don't, then, I mean, we don't go anywhere with it. And I myself like that aspect quite a bit. I have been looking at this idea. I mean, I started out, you guys have to understand, going from NASA boy to, okay, flat, how does that work floating in space, to, okay, that really couldn't work floating in space, to, okay, well, let's look at this infinite plane. Okay, well, how would that work? And tying the ice wall into it. I mean, long story short, Billy Ray, this last week, one of the other guys in the field, Dave from deep inside the rabbit hole, and my goodness, my name remembrance is gone. What was her name again, Rob?
That's Sophia Smallstorm.
Sophia, yes,
Yes.
have just put out a new theory that talks about this idea of how the ring area where the sun travels, which is what we show in the flat Earth map, that has created the equator area. Well, that sun was born at the North Pole and has moved in an outward circle over a long stretch of time. That's what the ice ages were. That's what historically the things that were passed down as the history of ice ages and the history of ancient civilizations that were very low as far as culture and knowledge, and then they evolved, if you will. Maybe that's where the whole theory of evolution was born from, this very primitive type man that didn't have a lot of knowledge. Now, built into all of that, you have these stories of these gods, these beings, these entities from afar, from beyond, from wherever, that come in with knowledge, that come in with advanced technology, flying around in strange craft, doing things that these people have never seen. It's almost like magic to them. Well, I came from a very deep ET background, so I was always thinking that that would be an interesting place for those ETs to have come from, is from an area outside that ice wall of Antarctica. Maybe there's another group of islands or continents out there. And just as all that idea is starting to take shape, two maps show up. There's one from a newspaper in Hawaii that's about 10,000 years old. It's a Tibetan map that shows the classic ice wall.
It's
around.
actually 1,000. I got to correct you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep saying
Yep.
10,000.
Yeah,
It's 1,000. I apologize. There you go. It's been a while since I read the article. Thank you, sir. Well, it's 1,000 years old, and they found it, and it shows the classic AE map with the ice wall around it, with 30 or so continents outside it. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu. I don't know if you've looked into some of these ancient civilizations. I'm almost certain you have, but that's kind of Dave's theory that fits kind of with the idea of these advanced beings traveling out with the ring of these suns that are born every 20,000, 30,000 years or so. The outer ring is more advanced. The inner ring is less advanced. So maybe the outer ring has come in, taken advantage of that fact, and set up a power structure, if you will, and that's the whole Antarctic Treaty. And we talked about John Kerry going to Antarctica on Election Day, and just a lot of interesting Antarctica things have been going on.
Man, it's crazy, right? Like Sophia Smallstorm is killing it, right? So I got put onto her because of Sandy Hook. She did a whole thing on Sandy Hook, and then she did a whole video on 9/11 as well. And now you're telling me about this. I got to go look that up. They have maps of Antarctica back in the day without the ice on it, and it reveals a whole bunch of terrain. Who knows what type of civilizations live there? All types of crap. I mean,
Wow.
we can even go as far as saying, right, that we don't know if it exists. I use that argument often. I think it exists, but
Exactly.
But people tell me all the time. They go, you talk about all this Illuminati stuff, all this conspiracy stuff. He's like, how do you even know? I'm like, have you ever been to Japan? They're like, no. I'm like, so how do you know it's there? Same difference,
There you go. Exactly. Well, you just made another little aha in my head when you said those maps that show Antarctica with no ice. Well, that would have been during the time the sun was making its outward journey and had uncovered that ice. See, that kind of fits in. To me, all the puzzle pieces start to fall together with this theory. It really just, it's a big aha for me this last, actually I just saw it yesterday when it came out, so it's been on my mind a lot. Definitely go watch it.
Also, Walt, the flood fits in.
Oh, the
with
flood,
that,
right.
Theory
I forgot.
as well.
Yeah,
Like
as the new sun is born. Well,
it's not
that,
so much a
but I mean,
biblical
even
flood,
other
I mean, it's
histories, other histories
quite
talk
well
about the
established
flood.
that it did happen, which is
geologically
why, you've got
established.
seashells.
Hancock.
But the biblical flood is the, I mean, all the floods are this, in my opinion, as of right now, and I reserve the right to change my opinion in about a month or so. All of these floods, I think the flood stories that we keep getting are all the same. They're describing the same event. It's just different cultures describing the same event. I mean, I could be very wrong, but that's the way I feel right now.
No, I think you're absolutely right. But the sort of point I was getting at is that there is, a huge amount of data and evidence that corroborates the flood scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you read Velikovsky, you can read, there's been a good series coming out lately that was talking about the strata of and blowing apart how they measure the age of things using strata, saying that the things on the bottom of the pile are much older than things on the top of the pile, when it's now been shown experimentally that the pile accumulates from left to right, sort of at the same height all the way along. So you can have things at the bottom of the strata that are much younger than things at the top of the strata. So you can throw out the whole strata evolution dating.
There's no such thing, John. There's no solid fossil chain. There's no solid fossil record. There's no long chronological sequence of even the strata in any one place in the world. It's all constructed from different parts of the world where they stick it all together to make it super long, a bit like history is, full stop. They take all of it and make it twice as long as it should be.
Which just, absolutely, which just throws everything into array. There's no way of knowing what was what. But I think the flood itself is something that I'd like to see evidence that it didn't happen, because all evidence points to the fact that there was a worldwide flood.
That's awesome.
I was going to say, bringing it back to the ice wall, that there isn't evidence is the key, and conspiratorially, the denial of evidence in of itself is evidence. That's the first thing I'd say. But of the little evidence that exists, you go back to obviously Admiral Byrd, which is a complete denial of any description that the mainstream would give you of what Antarctica is, as it describes another continent. You've got the 50,000-mile description around Antarctica. Is it Cook?
Cook, yes,
the
sir.
journeys around, and obviously you've got the complete non-existence of the continent on Google Earth. The whole of the middle's just a blob.
Are you serious? I did not know this. Tell me about that. That's crazy.
Just go to Google Earth, look at it. If that's a
It's
satellite
incredible.
taking those pictures, then look at it. It's just a blob. It also doesn't fit very well in the middle. I've seen a YouTube video years ago about the seam.
Wow, man.
Really
when you guys came on the show, I learned a couple of things. Some things I knew, some things I didn't, but you guys refreshed some things in my mind, right? When we're talking about, we haven't really seen a real picture of the globe. I think we had one in 1976 or 75 or something around that time period, like what do we really know about where we are, who we are, and what we're doing here? Like, what do we really know about that? It's all, we just have to go on the people's, or histories, or whomever's teaching this stuff to us. We have to go on their word. It's crazy. It's just I say we all get together and go to Antarctica and just go and see what happens.
I'm ready.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if we were allowed to do that? That'd be so cool if we could just go and say, you know what? This area is unexplored. As humans with a desire for exploration and discovery, let's go explore it. But unfortunately, we're not allowed.
I got some prices of going down there a couple of months ago, and the cheapest one was like a 1 week cruise, and it was around the $10,000 or $12,000 for the week. And there was one there for $28,000. That was a couple of weeks on a boat. I guess they take you to a couple of spots, and then you cruise back home again.
Yeah,
for $28,000. Who can afford that?
It's a one-way trip.
Limited portion.
And you're not going. You can't be unattended. Like you're going to have to stay with the tour. It's not like you can jump off onto the ice and start walking south.
Oh,
no. You have to stay with them, and you'd be crazy too anyway. You'll die.
But you're absolutely right, Billy. I mean, it does come down to you're literally faced with you've either been there yourself, you know, like you say, have you ever been to Japan? How do you know it exists? You don't. You don't know it exists. You believe it exists, but and all the evidence points to existing, but you don't know it exists. But this is it. It comes down to trust and faith and belief in other people, unless we go there ourselves. And unless we go there ourselves, it
And
will
that's
always remain trust, faith, and belief.
But even
that's
let
the
me
point
just
for the
take it.
ballers, though, isn't it? Sorry, no, but that's the
No,
point
no
for the ballers as well, Billy. You know, they don't have. They purport to have the evidence, but actually under scrutiny, that's why all those guys are here. Under scrutiny, they don't have the evidence either. So, sorry.
It's all right. No, you know what? I'd take it a step further, and this is how I don't know if what this says about me, but even if I'm there, I don't know if it exists. You know, like right now, I don't know if this exists. I don't know what I'm experiencing. I don't know how I'm experiencing it. I think I do. You know,
Yeah.
I think I have a general knowledge of what's going on, but in reality, what the hell is going on? You know, and I think the biggest achievement of the powers that be, or the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the biggest achievement is that they have programmed everybody to believe that this reality is set around a certain amount of cold hard facts that cannot be changed, that we have determined. You know, and that's just the bottom line of it. This is the way that Earth and life operates, and we're not allowed to venture out of that box that they put us in. Otherwise, you're crazy, you're nutcases, you believe in a flat Earth, go get locked up, you're nuts. You know what I mean? So it's just that simple to me. And when I tell people all the time, I'm like, I just really, I don't know what's going on. They look at me like I'm freaking crazy, but but I'm like,
that's
you know,
the best way to be.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not a weakness. I mean, in today's society, it is seen as a weakness to say you don't know. You know, if you're asked a question and you say you don't know, they're like, so you don't know. In that case, you don't know anything. It's not a weakness to say I don't know. But yeah, in terms of bringing it back to the ice wall, I think you were right, Adam. It was Captain. There was Captain Cook and there was Captain Ross. There were three of them. The other one was a HMS something or other, Challenger or something, and they all tried to circumnavigate the Antarctic continent, and I think it ranged from 52,000 miles to something like 65,000 miles, and most of they took, you know, over 3 years to do this thing. How does it take 3 years to go around a 12,000 mile continent? Why can't you send two boats, one clockwise, one anti-clockwise, and you know, you could settle this thing in 6 weeks, and yet, you know, we've got no circumpolar navigation or anything.
And that's then the second quandary that then historically, if you think about how long ago that was, then historically nobody goes and settles it. There's no definitive record. We've triangulated every bit of Africa in the 1800s, but nobody really bothered to sort that out. It wasn't, and that to me is less plausible as well. Do you know what I mean? That there isn't an answer to that, especially even now in the modern world. We're just told it's there, but you can't go there because like it's bad if you throw your Coke cans in.
And we're told that one person has ever circumnavigated the globe from north to south to north again, and yet, you know, how many people can do it east to west? I mean, the reason there is one person that's only ever done it north, south, north, and he was the cousin of the Queen and was known for faking accidents and everything else. Highly untrustworthy character. It's because it's impossible. On the flat Earth, you can't go north from south to north again. So,
That's amazing. It's amazing information. You know, and it's you guys make a really compelling case. I have a few good friends that listen to the podcast, and they only listen because I'm their friend, and they feel like they should be supporting me in something like this. So they're like, okay, we'll listen to your crazy podcast, and they tell me, in particular with your show, they were like, why are you having flat earthers on a show? And I'm like, they make a compelling case. I'm like, how do we know that the earth isn't flat? And they told me, you're crazy, bro. They were like, and anybody that believes in a flat earth is crazy. I mean, literally, these are great friends of mine. You are crazy. And there's no way in hell that you're going to get me to believe that the earth is flat. Well, one of them actually kind of came around, a credit to you guys. He kind of said, and it's still a work in progress here, but it's knowing the character of this man, it's a big thing. He kind of came around and said, okay, they made some good points and I'm going to look into it, which is actually more than you can ask for. You know what I mean? At that point, you've done something good. So kudos to you guys, but mostly I got you're crazy, but I get that for every subject. I just did a interview on the origins of Easter and achieving Christ consciousness. And I got a couple of friends that wanted to disown me because they said I was a Christ denier. There's always something. So it's just the way it is.
Have you found that you've lost friends?
I haven't lost. See, first off, I have a very limited. I have tons of acquaintances. I have about 10 people that I call friends, and they are real friends. So no, I haven't lost friends, but they do think I'm a little more crazy every time they listen to an episode of The Infinite Fringe. No, but I have a couple of like-minded friends as well, so they support 100%. So it's not all bad.
I think you're very brave.
Well, I don't know how brave it is at this point to do something like this. I think it's necessary, right? Like, I think outlets like yours and outlets like mine and like tons of other ones that are around are necessary. A lot of people say, well, it's been done before. Yeah, but there's always room for new, and there's always new people to reach, because I think we are the biggest minority in the world. But I mean, I guess some people would call it brave. I don't know how brave it is, but I would definitely say it's necessary.
The end thing to say to someone now who's new to all this is, what's your best proof for the Earth being a globe? Or the first thing that pops into your head if someone asks you, and most will say NASA pictures. We've got satellites up there taking pictures. There's a few other different answers, but that's probably the go-to question for anyone out there these days. And it works very, very well, because we can debunk quite easily the answers that they give us on most occasions.
Yeah, absolutely. But even on a very basic level, for somebody that's not really into the flat Earth or doesn't know as much about the flat Earth as you guys do, on a very basic level, you can disprove the thinking. And they're like, okay, so what evidence do you have for the globe? Well, we have pictures and everything and all this nonsense they'll say or whatever. Well, what evidence do you have that Osama bin Laden brought down the towers? What evidence do you have that Assad gassed his people? What evidence do you have? I mean, you could go down the line. What evidence do you have of the 7/7 attacks? Come on. There is none for anything. 9 times out of 10, it's that nuts. So you can literally say, like, what evidence do you have that the Earth is a globe? They got pictures. Pictures are made up. All right, admitted by NASA. What do you got? What's next? They'll say the same thing about the flat Earth. What evidence do you have that the Earth is flat? Like, what evidence do you have that the Earth is round? I'm like, come on. Like, the math works for the globe, right? Well, the math also works for a flat Earth. We could just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Like, literally, it's. I think it's a disease almost, that people just can't come to terms that they don't know anything.
Well, that's just it. It's that sort of nihilistic point of view that's perpetuated through society that says there is no Earth is not the center of the universe, but I am. Right? Everything should revolve around me.
I think the not knowing anything is a great place to start.
Well, I just learned something. Josh is the center of the universe,
That's right.
which is crazy.
Tell me about it.
We've been calling him that guy since day one, so I'm just saying.
Go ahead, guy. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Hello?
Have you got any
All
backlash from this? Have you been told to shut up? You know, you're a reasonable sort of celebrity figure at the moment. You had any backlash?
Oh man, no, not really. I mean, there's people that are afraid because they don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they're right to be afraid. I have no idea. I've been doing this for a long time. As far as actually having a show, I haven't been doing it for a long time. As far as the Infinite Fringe, but I've been active in. I don't even want to label it as the truth community. I don't know what I would label it, but I've been active in what it is we do for since 2004. I want to say since 2004, I've been awake or hashtag woke since I want to say 1998. In 2001, I was sitting in Midtown when those towers came down. I saw them come down, and I didn't see the planes crash into them. When I walked outside, I was at work. I worked in Midtown at the time. I walked outside, and they were on fire. And first instinct for me was to walk down towards it. Because I spent a lot of time in those towers, and I know a lot of people in the towers, and I knew people, close to family members of mine that were around the tower area on that day. So I went towards it. By the time I got to about, I want to say 33rd Street, or either 33rd or 23rd Street over here in New York City, one of the towers collapsed.
Wow.
And I didn't know it. I just saw people running, and I ran too, because I didn't know what was going on. The stories that went around that day in New York were crazy. Like, everyone was talking about something. They were like, "Oh, the Washington is being attacked." I heard, that 10 bomber planes were coming. I mean, you heard everything from people. So I didn't know exactly what was going on at the time. People started running. I ran too. And the building collapsed. Luckily, I was able to locate my girlfriend at the time, and pull her out of where she was, which was on 23rd Street, not far away from the towers. And I continued to walk down in that direction to try to find my cousin, who wasn't there. I thought he was, but he wasn't. He had gotten stopped. The train stopped when the towers fell. But that day, I remember it to this day because I was with two other people, and I turned around and told them, Osama bin Laden did this. This was what I said. I turned to them and I said, this was Osama bin Laden. I can guarantee it. And I went home, and I came back to the tower area a few times, and this is going to sound silly to you guys, but I really thought those towers were mine, even though I knew they weren't. But it was such a sight here in New York City, and it's still missing. Mm-hmm. They got the tower here, the what is it called? The Freedom Tower, and it's beautiful, but it's nothing compared to what the World Trade Center used to be. And it left a huge void in me that those things were gone. And I thought it was lock, stock, and barrel Osama bin Laden, and it's evidence of the programming, because they drilled it in my head beforehand that Osama bin Laden was going to be responsible for something like this. I had no other reason. All I used to do was watch the regular news once in a blue. Yeah, I knew about the New World Order, but not really. I knew it existed. I knew Skull and Bones. I knew about Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse. But that's about all I really knew,
Hey, Billy, if I remember, there was the buildings were still, had only just collapsed when there was already a interview being conducted by someone blaming Osama.
Yeah, that was a World Trade Center 7, right, or something that collapsed. No, they said it was going to collapse before it collapsed.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about even an hour after they collapsed, because Building 7 was 8 hours after.
Yeah.
There was a guy on one of like a CNN or a Fox and he was already he was a CIA guy or a government guy, and he was already talking about Osama bin Laden being the main suspect, and it just grew from there.
Along with the hired people, Rob, in the vans that were screaming that it was a terrorist attack too, in the white vans.
Well, Bush went out, didn't he? Bush made a press conference saying it was Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, but but the important, the part that hit me was I said it before I even heard any of that stuff. So it was programmed in my mind before all that.
Is that because he was the prime suspect on the 93 bombing or the 98 bombing? The 98 bombing?
I forget who was the prime suspect in the 98 bombing. He was, the 90. Yeah, no, was it 98 or 90? I think it was 93 actually.
It was probably because he was mentioned on The Simpsons.
Well, that's what he was mentioned all over the place. I remember I saw him in movies. I saw him in a lot of things, and I thought Osama bin Laden did this. And 4 years, I remember in 2004, and this is why I say I've been active since 2004. My cousin, the same one I went to get at the World Trade Center, he tells me, "Hey, listen, man, 9/11." It's not what you think it is. And I was like, how the hell are you going to tell me that, brother? I was there. I saw it happen. What the hell are you going to tell me different? And he's like, listen, you're being lied to, and I can prove it. And I'm like, what do you mean you can prove it? I'm like, come on. I'm like, what are you doing? Where are you going on the internet listening to this nonsense? I will disprove this in 2 seconds. Tell me where to go. And he's like, go to Infowars.com. prisonplanet.com, and go to davidicke.com. So this is where I went. I did not know who Alex Jones was. I didn't know who David Icke was. I went to David Icke, and I was like, okay, this guy's talking about reptiles. I'm out. And then I went to Prison Planet, and I saw a video that he had up for free called The Great Illusion. And I started taking notes. I'm like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. Like, just dismissing it off the top. And there was one thing that popped out, and it was a BBC article. It said, 9/11 hijackers alive and well. And I was like, whoa. So I paused it. And I was like, okay, this has got to be nonsense. But I jotted it down. I jotted down everything that it said, and I Googled it. I looked it up. And there it was. I'm like, okay, it's a legit article. And I even went as far as to click on the BBC Home link to see if it took me to the BBC website. I'm like, this has got to be a hoax. So I clicked on that, and it took me to the BBC website. And that was the end of my life. It changed my life forever, that moment. I will never forget it because it changed my life. And I called my cousin, and I apologized to him so many times. And I was like, at that point, I knew something was wrong. And
Tell me, Billy. Sorry.
No problem. What's up?
Is your cousin? I hope you've gone back and repaid the debt to your cousin by telling him the Earth is flat.
Oh my God, my cousin is a big proponent of the flat Earth, man. As soon as I had you guys on, he hit me up and he's like, "I knew the Earth was flat." He's like, "I've been telling you this for how long?" And it's true. Like it's funny because I put him on to Bill Cooper and to the New World Order. He's my younger cousin, so I was schooling him on that, right? Turns out he ends up schooling me, right? And that's just the way it worked out. So ever since 2004, I've been involved. And that 2004, I found out in the summer of 2004, I went down to the World Trade Center on 9/11. I started printing up articles to give to people. And I just stood there and printed up articles and handed them to people. And I'm like, once people see this, they'll have to know what I'm talking about. They'll have to understand. It's evidence. I'm like, look, the 9, I'm serious. This is the way I was thinking. I'm like, the 9/11 hijackers, some of them are still alive. Look at this. I'm like, look at this. It's the BBC. And I was handing it to people. I was like, look, the AP, there were drills of on the morning of FEMA was here. I'm like, look, it's the Associated Press. Take a look at this. I'm not making it up.
Had you seen the big documentary Loose Change, which was like a
no, actually, it's funny because that night I hadn't seen Loose Change, but they were premiering. So this was in 2004. It was 2005, the second year I went back. If my memory serves me correctly, they were premiering Loose Change 2 in New York City. I was standing next to Jason Bermas and not even knowing who Jason Bermas was. And I was handing out these. You guys know who Jason Bermas is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm handing out these articles that I printed out at my job. I have this huge duffel bag of articles, and I'm handing them out. And people are like, he's like, "Who are you with?" I'm like, "I'm not with anyone. I'm here by myself." and I'm having a discussion with someone. They're like, "This is nonsense. What do you think?" I'm like, "This is the BBC." I'm like, "Go look it up." I'm like, "This is what you consider to be real news. Go look this up." And Jason Bermas comes and he's like, "No, he's absolutely right." And we're talking, Jason Bermas and myself. I'm sure Jason doesn't remember this, but Jason Bermas, myself, and whomever the poor soul was that I was trying to get hard to believe that 9/11, that there's something wrong with 9/11. And we're going back and forth. And Jason is like, "Listen, you need to come to this. We are premiering Loose Change at a theater in not far away from the World Trade Center." And I couldn't do that. I had commitments later on that night that I had to attend to. And I couldn't go. And I kicked myself in the, I couldn't go, so it's not that bad, but I really would have liked to have been there because it was the premiere of Loose Change. And I found out after the fact what the film was. He gave me like a flyer, so I was like, okay. And then I saw the phenomenon that it turned into after the fact, and I was like, oh my God, I could have been there, but I wasn't.
I think at this point I need to add a caveat that the BBC is by no means ever to be trusted.
Yeah.
They were the ones that reported 20 minutes prior to the World Trade Center number 7 falling. Whilst reporting that it had fallen, it was shown in the background of the reporter that the building was still standing for 20 minutes later and then fell. So anything the BBC says, we really should take with an enormous pinch of salt because the BBC is MI6.
Well, we all know that there's a script. There's the universal script that is handed down for the media network. So we all know that. But they do drop. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying your enthusiasm with your flyers and your duffel bag just reminded me of my day when I came back from my beach video and I put it on my computer and I saw the time lapse as the sun went away and down, and it was like, oh, this is it. I'll show this on YouTube. Everybody will get it. It'll be like instant. Tomorrow it'll be a different world. I'll wake up to a new world. Yeah, man, I love it. That's great.
Man,
great.
It was a beautiful thing because and it was also a wake-up call. Like, it's just another level of the awakening. I was like, okay, people aren't going to believe this. I didn't believe that people wouldn't believe it. Like, I believed it. I saw it and I'm like, okay, I did enough research and I'm like, something's wrong. Like, something's clearly wrong here. Everybody's got to see this. Like, when 1 + 1 = 2, right? It does not equal 3, right? So if I'm showing people 1 + 1 and I'm saying it equals 3, they're going to tell me, yeah, something's wrong with that. I use the same philosophy for all this. And I had tons of articles. I had at least 10. I still keep them because it's a reminder of what I did. Well, anyway, every year since 2004, I go down to Ground Zero and do a version of what I did that first time.
There's still plenty of, sorry, Billy, there's still plenty of people at Ground Zero, like 9/11 investigate.
In 2000,
the black shirt wearing guys, are they still in full force down there?
I'm one of those guys. Yep. I have my black shirt from 2006. Yep. I want to say 2005 was a good year. I met Alex Jones down there in 2005. I remember meeting him, and I know Alex Jones is all over the place, man, and I still listen to him every day. But back then, I was like, whoa, it's Alex Jones. And I remember, I don't know if it was 2005 or 2006, but I remember him coming up the stairs at Ground Zero from the train station. And I'm like, hey, Alex. I'm like, what's going on? And I shake his hand. I'm like, listen, Alex, I want to get down. What can I do? And he's like, I remember clear as day. He's like, what do you mean? What do you mean you want to get down? And I'm like, I want to be down. Like, I want to work for you. Tell me what I need to do to work for you. I want to work for you. And he's like, no. Do it yourself. Fight the New World Order. Come on, let's go fight the New World Order. It's literally what he told me. Just like that. He's like, come on, let's go.
Awesome.
And he had a ton of cameras around him and everything. And
what's the significance of the black shirts? What are they stand for?
You know what? Before we're off, I'm gonna go get mine and I'll show it to you. It's beautiful. It just says investigate 9/11, and in the back, I think it says 2006. There was a huge event that was held at Cooper Union. That's a university not far away, and they had some hip hop artists perform. It was We Are Change that launched it, and I was working with them at the time just to try to get something done, you know. And in 2005, there was a good crowd. 2006, there was a massive crowd. I think 2007 was ridiculous. Tons of people. Lately, I can count about 30, 40, maybe less than that. Last year, it might have been less than that. But I will say this. The people that come out, and I only do it once a year, twice a year. That's what my schedule allows for. So September 11th is sacred to me. But there's people that go down there every weekend still. And I got to say, the people that are down there on September 11th last year and the year before, it wasn't a lot of us, but we make a decent impression. They put together a very, very solid, very how do you say it? Very noticeable presentation that day.
Do you get people angry and
oh yeah,
you go? Yeah,
I've been spit at. People spit at me. They push me. Bikers come out. They're like rat, turncoat. They tell a bunch of stuff. But there's a lot of people that are super receptive, and you know, all you foreigners, man, the Australians, the Brits, all you guys, man, you guys come over here and you're 10 times more informed than we are, man. It's, you know, they come to Ground Zero and they're like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, you know, and they'll sit there and they'll listen, you know, as far as an American, they'll look at you and keep walking. But that's changed too.
What do you truly believe, Billy? Have you seen the Dr. Judy Woods documentary?
I have, you know, and I'm planning to do a 9/11, since that's my thing. That's the your subject is the flat earth. That's what's motivated you to do this. Mine is 9/11, you know, so I'm planning 9/11 month or maybe 9/11 week on my podcast. I already got 2 people lined up. I got I'll save it for later, but I'm trying to get Judy Wood to come on and talk about what she's doing and the research that she came up with. And you know, I can't speak to that. And this is what I tell people all the time, especially when you're trying to prove or you're trying to argue, I should say, not prove, trying to argue 9/11. Stick to what you know. Stick to what you can prove. And I don't know. I can't speak on that stuff. I'm just not that. I'm not well versed in any of that stuff. You know, I don't speak on nanothermite. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I don't know what the hell nanothermite does. So when people get into the destruction of the World Trade Center by explosives, I'm like, well, it kind of looked that way. I don't know. Here's what I can prove. I can tell you that or here's what mainstream media says anyway. I can tell you that this has been planned for many, many years. George Bush said that there was no prior knowledge. I can give you about 10 different articles of 10 different countries, including the Taliban, warning about 9/11. I can tell you that the mayor of San Francisco was warned about 9/11 before it happened. I could tell you that Building 7 fell without a single plane hitting it. There's a lot of evidence that I can speak to, as opposed to something like Judy Wood. I can't speak to that. I find it incredibly interesting, and it might be next level stuff that I don't know about. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, it'd be really good if you have Judy Wood on there, because she needs to be on.
What do you think about that? Tell me. You think you think?
I think it's fantastic.
Well, you see the pylons flying through the air, disintegrating as they're flying through the air. They're turning to dust. A jet fuel can't turn things to dust, can they? So it must have been something special.
Rob, what's your favourite? My favourite's Mini Nukes. Is my favourite. I watched the great, or read a great load of documents by a Russian demolition expert that claims that was the method, and
they claim those came from a very small, well-known country too, Adam. The nukes.
It's almost a case of all the above. I mean, you see the thermite cuts here. You see the disintegrating dusting, literally, of the pylons, like you talked about, Rob, and then the nuke theory is there too. And then I've even seen the crazier vibrational energy weaponry, like that could have been used there to create the tsunamis, to create the crazy weather patterns we're experiencing, with
using
frequency
like that too, and turning things to dust.
Turning it to dust, yes, sir.
That makes the cleanup a hell of a lot easier. They don't need nearly as many trucks to come in there and take stuff away, do they? Which was another thing that happened straight away.
She certainly put a good argument for the rubble being gone. Yeah. Oh man,
except for all the pieces that got put in all the cities around the world. We have a piece here close to where I live in our little town as a monument.
Was it going to be a piece of petrified wood like the space rock?
Might likely be.
So Billy,
I'll tell you.
So being that you came at this since 2004, 2001, I think you said you sort of semi woke up in 1998, which is around the sort of same time as I did.
Yeah.
Being that you were into this well before Flat Earth. How much damage do you think, if any, Flat Earth itself is doing to these causes of 9/11, 7/7?
Here's the way I look at that. If and it upsets me, and I don't get upset at a lot of things, but that upsets me sometimes. I don't see how it would do damage to any, but then again, I'm coming from a place where I think that we should be exploring everything.
Yeah.
When somebody comes up with something like, and this isn't a new idea. Okay, the flat Earth isn't a new idea. They're acting like it is for some reason, but it's not. It's not a new idea. And why are we not exploring this option? Like, why are we not exploring this possibility? Why would you say that it's damaging? People, that's the same argument they use against 9/11. So what people that are 9/11 truthers are saying that flat earthers are damaging their credibility. So people that are just another step up are saying that 9/11 truthers are damaging their credibility.
This is what we were talking about earlier, John, about that. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Exactly. It's absolutely ridiculous. We need to come together.
It's as though questions are now offensive or questions are now not allowed. It's all we're doing is asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being labelled, like we were saying earlier, we're being labelled as threats to government. Because
the questions are so stupid, they shouldn't be asked. Only
because
for that
the
reason.
Questions are so
stupid,
unanswerable.
I don't know if you guys saw this video.
Cause a paradigm shift.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry, carry on.
No, I apologize. My fault. I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys saw this video with what's this guy's name, man? This the so-called scientist, man.
Bill Nye.
No, not Bill Nye. That guy's not a scientist at all. The other guy that
Neil deGrasse.
I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
yes, Neil deGrasse Tyson. You know, and he's like, you don't have the right to ask questions, is pretty much what he said. He's like, you don't. I think he literally said, you don't have the right. You don't have that right. He said it in that video that he put out. And like, you know, so because you say something that you believe is true, meaning me, I forget this guy's name again. What's his name?
Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. And there you go. Because Neil deGrasse Tyson says it, I'm supposed to believe it because you say it. Like, I mean, for such a quote unquote smart guy, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. You know, and we're supposed to subscribe to that. I don't understand it. So, I mean, that's where I come from. I don't think you guys heard anything.
But he's got 4 million he's got 4 million followers or whatever he's got.
Yeah,
all hanging on every word he's saying.
Yeah, but these are, you know what I figured out? I don't know how right I am, but a lot of these people are pop culture junkies. He's the famous guy right now. You know, he's the famous scientist. It was Michio Kaku not too long ago, you know, that was the it scientist, Stephen Hawking's, right? Like the it thinker. You know, like it's just because these guys are famous and people want to seem like they're knowledgeable without doing actual work.
Just another propped up idol in the system that, that like you referenced before. It was Bill Nye, then it was Michio Kaku, then it was Hawking, then it was that other swindler for a while. Like there'll always be.
Yeah, Bill Nye is legit not a scientist. Like legit. Like he's not even like,
he's got an engineering degree.
Yeah. He's like not a scientist.
An actor. Major in acting.
And an actor.
That makes perfect sense. That guy is definitely an actor. That's what he is. And he's passing off as a scientist and people believe it. Mm-hmm. Nice. Who's that?
No idea.
That's me. I just have fun with the soundboard.
I thought it was a real baby. I was like,
walk away from the soundboard.
Nice. Very cool. I like it. I like it.
So we were talking earlier about your connection to wrestling. And Bill Apter and OneWrestling.com. And you had mentioned before that there's actually quite a few professional wrestlers that are into the conspiracies.
Well, I got to give a big shout out to my boy Ben Hameen Yala. He's a professional wrestler he's a white guy, but you wouldn't know it by looking at him. He says he's Prince of the House of Saud. And as of this moment, he has 415 wives. They increase and decrease. This is his wrestling gimmick. And he's super knowledgeable on all things political, all things conspiracy, all things alternative media. He knows his stuff because it's part of his character, and he's well connected. He's been a professional wrestler for a while, and he knows a lot of professional wrestlers that are into this sort of stuff. Mr. Hameen is looking to possibly dive into that at some point. Explore that well. But there's a lot of people that like AJ Styles was talking about the flat earth on a WWE show, you know, and that was organic. It wasn't scripted. It just came up. And AJ Styles is known for stuff like this. He dabbles in this stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of notable people that are quote unquote awake, for lack of a better term.
Sorry, Billy. Are you suggesting there's an upcoming script with Flat Earth coming into the WWE in some way?
Listen, I really hope not. Vince McMahon. I don't know if you guys know anything about WWE, but it's full of dribble. It's so bad. I really hope they don't do anything remotely resembling the Flat Earth, because it may get me to stop watching after they screw something like that up. And they will, because they screw everything up, and they'll probably just make fun. They're very mainstream. They have a very mainstream mentality. They're in the White House now, so they're going to make fun of anything like this, even though Trump lends himself to InfoWars sometimes. But no,
I'll tell you what, Billy. I'll tell you what. I was looking over your site and the podcast that you've done and that, and I downloaded the you said it a minute ago.
Ben Hameen,
was it?
Ben Hameen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I wasn't overly keen on listening to it because I know you were both wrestlers and this sort of thing, but I listened to that and that guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, he does.
He does.
Yeah, he really does.
This is not some brain dead, boxer or wrestler or whatever. He is. He's on the ball. He knows exactly what he's talking about, and he's
yes, I watched it. It was great.
On the ball.
Yeah,
he's on the ball, John. Is he?
Fuck off.
Not only is he extremely knowledgeable, but he'll kick your ass. He's like 6'3". That's huge. The guy's no joke, man. And the thing is, I started doing wrestling related stuff in order to get into this, in order to get into a conspiracy podcast and started off. The fact of the matter is I just didn't think I was ready for it. And I started doing the wrestling podcast, and it started to grow. And I started to make connections, and eventually I got on with Bill Apter. And I was listening to WrestleZone Radio, and I heard Ben Hameen on it. And I didn't quite care about them talking wrestling, but he kept dropping tidbits of 9/11 and tidbits of different false flags. And I was like, I got to get this guy on my show. So I reached out to him, and he's like, yeah, moron. He calls everybody moron. He's like, yeah, you stupid infidel. He's like, I'll come on your show.
He's great.
Yeah. So
I was laughing. I love his character.
He's like, I'll come on your show, moron. I'm like, okay, no problem. So he came on, and it was a wrestling show. And we did a full conspiracy episode on my wrestling show, just because that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to have him on to talk wrestling. I wanted to talk conspiracy because it's ultimately what I wanted to do. And I wanted to spread it to those people, to the wrestling audience. And it was very well received. And ever since then, I've been friends with Hameen. And anytime I need something, and I try not to bother the guy because he's busy. I needed a wingman for the Syria attacks, and I automatically just call Hameen. I was like, hey, listen, man, you got some time? I want to do an episode on this. And he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. And he's never said no to me, even though he's got 8,000 things going on, so I really appreciate that guy. And he's super knowledgeable. I mean, he just knows so much. It's like he stays on the news, like he stays on the internet. He's always researching. He put me onto this. I covered it on my podcast last week. He put me onto this wall that they've supposedly found surrounding the entire Earth on Google Earth. It might be a glitch, it might be a hoax, but regardless of that, like he put me onto it. He's like, hey, read this. Like, where did you find that? Like, where did you find the time to find that? Like,
is that
are you talking about the wall underwater?
Yeah, it's underwater, and
it's
supposedly surrounding the entire Earth. You guys know anything about it? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's got gates and all sorts.
Yeah, the flat Earth's been on that a minute. I mean, it's not been forever, but I'd say that video came out 6-8 months ago, maybe.
Listen, look how far ahead you guys are.
It could be a glitch. It could be a glitch. It could be where Antarctica's wall would be in relation to things. I mean, there's been a lot of weird theories out there.
Could be where
would you say he's on the road to becoming a baller skeptic?
He definitely is. He's not subscribed. He's not subscribed to the ball at all. Like he's completely open, and that's what I love about Hameen. Like, it's hard to find people that are completely open-minded about everything. If somebody came to me and told me, listen, leprechauns and unicorns, I remember John Lennon said that. That's why I love John Lennon. You know, he was like, who am I to say that these things aren't real? And you're absolutely right. You're a freaking genius for that, because you're absolutely right. And that's exactly how I feel. Who am I to say that that stuff's not real? You know, and Hameen is never gonna. Well, he says that there's no God. He is a hardcore atheist. So
interesting.
Well, you've heard the lyrics to "The Man on the Hill," have you?
Yes, but you can refresh my memory.
I could try, but I think we need to bring him up. But he's talking about spinning balls and globes and all sorts of stuff. Yeah,
man. You know, and
agree.
No, and
he's sitting perfectly still. I remember that.
Alex Jones plays it all the time.
Does he? Very.
How do you guys feel? You know, it's interesting because so many people in our communities, they have so many different opinions on AJ, Alex Jones. How do you guys feel about him?
I think he's a gateway.
So many people say that. Yeah, so many people say that. Why? Why is that? You could be right.
And I thank him for his work, you know, but he takes
he gets people to a point, but
by his own choice, he's only prepared to go so far, isn't he? By his own reporting and the areas he purposely avoids. Flat Earth's been brought up to him, and he's only prepared to go so far. And unfortunately, the rabbit hole goes a lot deeper than he. But to me, he's bringing a lot of people from the mainstream, and that's a great job that nobody else has done anywhere near as much as him in that respect, I think.
Well, you know, with the whole, I'm not a big Trump guy. I hate the Clintons, okay? And I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I've only voted once in my entire life. You know, but I'm not a Trump guy. I'm from New York. So I know who Donald Trump is. I know what he's done. It's just not my deal. I need to vote for somebody a lot more honorable than Donald Trump. I don't trust him. I never have. So I didn't vote for Donald Trump, needless to say. So it's a different feel for InfoWars now because, well, Alex is now turning and saying negative things about Trump, which it took him a long time to get there. But that being said, and the gateway thing, let's not forget about the gateway thing also. It might be true, but he brought me here. I want to say that, and I've seen Alex Jones grow since 2004 to now. It's incredible how big InfoWars has gotten. It's changed to the point where I don't dig it anymore as much as I used to, but I still have a debt to the man. He put.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, dude. You know the man. We're talking about a character and a news show as far as we're concerned, but you know the man, and that's. Totally
well, no, I wouldn't really say that. I met him once. I met him twice actually, or 3 times. I've met him 3 times, but I wouldn't know the man. I know the character just as much as you do, but the character is what brought me here, is what I mean. So whether
I remember with you. Yeah, sorry. Really? I remember him speaking it. Go on, John. Go on.
No. I'm just saying I agree with you entirely, Billy. I have views on Alex Jones at the moment that they're 8-9 years old, but like you say, I hold a debt to Alex because Alex put me on the first step. And from I wouldn't have gone. I wouldn't have found that step if it wasn't for Alex. So. Yeah, as much as whatever he is, whoever he works for, whatever he stands for, I will always hold a debt, as I do to Eric Dubay.
Oh, nice, nice.
for opening up the flat Earth. So Alex opened a shitload up for me, and so did Eric, and all the rest of it. So yeah, there'll always be a place in my heart, and I it sounds like you're coming from the same.
No, absolutely,
same stage.
Absolutely. I have my Mount Rushmore of awakenings. I really don't care what anybody thinks about it, or what they think about these people, but I have a personal connection to them. And even whether they don't know me, but I feel like I know them, and I may not, and I know I don't, but it's Alex Jones, David Icke, who David Icke is the freaking man. I don't care what anybody says. I remember when David Icke came to New York City for the first time, and I found that, for the first time since I've been awake. And I jumped out of my desk and ran to Ticketmaster. I mean, I stopped what I was doing. Like, just stopped. I didn't even tell my boss I was leaving. I was like, David Icke is here? I don't have to go over to England to see him? Goodbye. I took off and I went and bought tickets.
Are you still after David Icke? I mean, are you still, following David Icke?
I don't follow him. No,
I mean, moved on.
No, I mean, I wouldn't say I moved on. I don't follow him as much as I used to. But I mean, I saw him in September, I want to say. He was here. I bought tickets to go see him. Every time he's going to come, I'm going to go see him. There's always information you can take from it. Whether I don't know where he is, but you know what? He says that a lot of it is just coming from his own brain. So whatever, I'm into it.
Do you get to the point now? Do you get to the point now where you're judging your, I hate to call them heroes or whatever, but heroes of the past, role models, whatever, that you're judging them by the standard of flat Earth now, and then, because they won't talk about flat Earth, then, I mean, I'm talking personally here.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty tough litmus test, yep.
It's a bit of a litmus test, isn't it?
I judge them by not necessarily how far they're willing to go. You guys still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it went numb for me for a second. There was a sound going on, and now it was gone. It doesn't matter. Anyway, not necessarily by how far they're willing to go, but by how consistent they stay with what they're doing. So, like, it's David Icke, right? I got Anthony Hilder, whom I loved. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, and and of course Bill Cooper. Because, see, a lot of the information in Behold the Pale Horse is wrong, or at least I've been able to verify that it's wrong. But it put me on. Like, I remember reading it, walking down the street. Like, I can't put it down. I was bumping into poles in Brooklyn while I was going to pick up my girlfriend at the time. And I'm reading Behold the Pale Horse. And I'm reading about Skull and Bones and George Bush and coffins. And I'm like, I knew it. And I'm like, so these are things I'll never forget. So these are guys that, I may not agree with everything that they do, and Bill Cooper, God rest his soul, but all the other guys, they might be disinfo agents, all this other stuff. I still owe them a debt, and they brought me to a certain point, and they were the founding fathers of this for me. So I will always have a soft spot in my heart for them. Anytime David Icke comes to New York, I'm buying a ticket. I'm gonna go see him talk.
If they turned around and said something that was grossly against your paradigm or how you believed, if they turned around and said you need to worship Mother Earth or something.
Well, I think Alex Jones did that. I am not a Trump guy. I am not. I could not believe that he was endorsing Donald Trump. And I get it. I get why he did. I hated Hillary Clinton more than anybody else. Yeah. But to endorse Donald Trump, I was like, what the hell is wrong with Alex Jones? And it's a lot of of people in the alternative. And I don't want to say the alt-right because that's a totally different thing altogether. But in the alternative news realm or something, let's call it the Iron Realm for today. In that realm of people, there's a lot of people that sided with Trump. I don't know where you guys stand politically, but I'm not. I don't go there. I still listen to Alex. There's information. I want information, and they always bring up something that I can go dig into. If David Icke turns around and goes, "You need to worship Mother Earth," I'm like, all right, what does that mean? And I may disagree with it, and I'm like, okay, fine. I don't agree with it. What else you got? And that's just it. I'm not.
That's what I call take the best and leave the rest.
Well, yeah, it's you got to have a filter
discernment.
for it.
It's all about discernment.
So I listen to anyone. That's if I would have had that, if I would have, I forget where I heard Eric Dubé for the first time. But he's the one that I already knew about the flat Earth, but he's the one that made the convincing argument for me to be like, okay, this is something I need to look into. I forget where I heard him the first time, but I could have just shut it off. I'm like, this is flat Earth stuff. This is stupid. If you listen to it,
I'll tell
you'll
you
be
where
surprised
I
at what you
heard
find.
him. I heard him on the Higher Side chats, and I put a tweet out on March 30th, 2015.
That wasn't too long ago. I remember when he was on Higher Side.
Yeah, and it was the Higher Side chats. As soon as I heard that, because I had all the pieces to the puzzle, I was looking for the last piece. Whereas some other people came to Eric and found he had the first piece of the puzzle, and then they had to find out all the other pieces, like NASA was fake and Hubble was fake and space was fake and the ISS and everything else. But that was the last piece of the puzzle for me. It was just listening to that. Within a couple of minutes, it was a case of massive head slap. And how did I not see this before? I don't know whether when you heard flat Earth, was it a case of, well, you've been awake since 2004 or whatever, so it must have been one of the last pieces of the puzzle to fit in place. Like, you knew that NASA moon landings were fake, but you didn't know why, and this was like a bang, there you go, that's why they had to show us a ball Earth. So I don't know how you felt about that.
No, that's what I continue to look for, that aha moment, because there's more of it. It's almost like a drug, right? That moment that you realize that things aren't what you thought they were, and it's like a Russian doll, right? All of this is like a Russian doll. You keep uncovering layers. You think you've gotten to the bottom, but you really haven't. And I don't think any of us will get to the bottom in our lifetime. So there's a lot more to uncover, and I want to keep uncovering it. I just want to keep knowing and finding out. It's just fascinating to me. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that moment, that fix, that high, right? Like, you want to put it that way. You want to make it in drug terms. That's what it is to me when I find out something new. When
that's kind of how I was with the David video yesterday with that's new theory about the rings. So yeah, I know exactly the feeling you're talking about.
One of you guys has to send me that on Twitter.
David Weiss.
Just send me that so I can take a look. That's gonna be me tonight.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm doing tonight.
Well, how far down the rabbit hole on some of this crazier stuff have you gone with stuff like Alex Jones and the Bill Hicks thing? What's your take on that?
Oh man, what the thing is, I didn't really know too much about Bill Hicks. Of course, I went down that hole when I heard about it. So no, I don't think that Alex Jones is Bill Hicks. But I am willing to tell you this: I don't know enough about Bill Hicks to make an educated to have an educated opinion on it. It might be an uninformed opinion, but my uninformed opinion is that Alex Jones is somebody completely different. He's not Bill Hicks. I could be wrong, but yeah, I've gone down there. I'll go down any route. Like you presented to me, I'm gonna go down and take a look.
Check it out. There you go. You got to see what's going on with it.
Yeah, I'll go down and look at it.
The thing I don't get with that one is Bill Hicks could have just as easily turned into Bill Hicks, head of InfoWars. There was no need to kill somebody off. He didn't have some strange past that would have precluded him from being able to do the Alex Jones role. So I don't see what motivation for conspiracy there is there for them to kill Bill Hicks and then reinvent Alex Jones. Do you get me?
Yeah, I agree 100%. But
if you wanted the figurehead, it could just have been a Bill Hicks. It was credible and satirical and intelligent.
And he had more fame at the time. He could have just
that's what I mean. And yeah, so I don't see a motivation for the conspiracy to change the person. Do you get me? It's
absolutely.
Absolutely.
You know which one really like shakes me to my core, and I did a show about it. Is the Sandy Hook? It's just crazy. I don't know what to believe there. I just know that we're being lied to. Same thing about 9/11. I believe that we're just being lied to. I don't know exactly what to believe. I know we're being lied to about a lot of things, but we definitely lied to with a lot of aspects of Sandy Hook, and it's scary as a hell to me, because if it's like anyone is saying, it just to like Sophia Smolstrom, for instance. I don't know if you guys take time and watch her documentary on Sandy Hook. It's scary. It's legit scary. It's scarier than any Hollywood scary movie that you'll ever see. Put that on at night at 12 a.m. Turn off all the lights and get scared out of your mind, because that's how scary it is. I was scared watching that. I don't know where you guys stand on it, but that's the one that just like legit scares the hell out of me, that they were willing to do all of this crap, if that's true. Where do you guys stand on it?
Go ahead.
Rob should be the one explaining it.
Yeah. This is Rob's forte, conspiracy, and especially false flag events. But
Sandy Hoax.
I mean, we've had the same here. 7/7, the Lee Rigby affair, the recent London Bridge. I can drive in a straight line, killing people, and then suddenly I have to veer off and run into a bollard, and then have to run 150 meters. Nonsense stuff. What's scary is the arrogance, and also the sheep-like behavior of the public, that we believe it, and we see these inconsistencies and nonsense that we've still not seen. The most recent attack with all the CCTV cameras on London Bridge, we've still not seen it. So for me, the scary thing is that we can get away with it more than anything. And even, as you say, to the extent of such a script that they wrote for Sandy Hook, something as sick as that they're prepared to even do that. It's killing a soldier's one thing in terms of a script, but that was beyond the pale, isn't it?
It's ridiculous.
My apologies, Billy. I had kids running around everywhere, so I missed that last bit of what you were saying, but I guess it was about Sandy Hook, was it?
Yeah.
We've finished with all that stuff now, Rob. We've done with that.
Yeah, we're too late. Next time, Rob. Well, actually, Billy Ray has had on someone who would actually know quite a bit about it. You've interviewed Wolfgang Halbig, have you not?
Yeah, I did. Go back and listen to that. Anybody listening, it's on Podbeam, The Infinite Fringe on podbeam.com or on iTunes. It's up there. Wolfgang.
One brave guy, isn't he?
Yeah, man, Wolfgang is a beast, man, and he's so nice. What a nice guy. And the things he sacrificed to continue to do what I don't know if you guys are aware, but his website is down. And for him to do that, either he got threatened by some really serious people, or his wife got to him, one of the two. He was having a lot of issues with people outside telling him to shut up, and he was having family issues because he was going down the road they didn't want him to go. That guy is brave. I can't say anything. When somebody made the reference to us and what we do and being brave. Now, Wolfgang Halbig is a brave dude. That guy is no joke. And he had no business speaking to me, and he did. He gave me his phone number. I could call him whenever I want, he said, and just talk about Sandy Hook. Mm-hmm. And he was just so passionate, so incredibly knowledgeable, and so courageous, man. I mean, that I told him, I don't know if it was in the interview or not, but I told him, I was like, you must have a pair of brass balls, bro, to do what it is you did, man. Because not many people would do it. Not many people would do it. He sacrificed everything to find the truth on Sandy Hook. It's incredible. That guy was serious. Go back and listen to the interview. Any of the listeners and or any of you guys that haven't listened to it, it's definitely worth a listen. And even if you don't listen to my interview, go look up Wolfgang Halbig on the internet.
Have you watched him in the courtroom from
I have, yeah.
a year and a half ago when he had the lady lawyer? Did you watch all what? What did you think of her?
Oh man, like I don't really know what I don't know where she was. Like what it's so convoluted.
My personal opinion on her was she just wasn't into it. She just didn't believe, or she was very unprepared. When it was just terrible watching. It was very, very frustrating.
At that point, like, who did they put him with? Yeah, like it just seemed like I don't know whether she was paid off by someone or she was just incompetent. Like that's what I don't.
To me, it was just fumbling around, asking questions of who was the ball dude? I was talking to Justin about this last week, guys, but it's just he was the prosecutor or he was terrible anyway, absolutely terrible, and she was terrible. It was just a farce, and he wasn't allowed to talk. It was just so frustrating watching that. But I watched all of it, but it was just so frustrating,
It's difficult to get through, to watch all of that. You're committed, bro.
No, he's a brave guy. So where's he up to now without going in? I will go and listen to the interview. So where's he up to now? Is he been...
his site's been taken down. He's not active like he was before. No, he's not active like he was before. I'm sure if the right outlet calls him up, he's gonna go talk to him. Maybe I don't know. I haven't heard from him in a bit, so I don't know. So I hope he's all right.
Jumping gears here, as Alex would say.
Jumping gears here.
Billy, can you tell us what it is that makes you a baller skeptic?
Well, I'm just a skeptic, right? I'm a skeptic on just about anything. So, yeah, man. You know what? One of my favorite things is the globe. I love the globe. I love the way it looks. It's beautiful. So I have a globe on my desk at work. I have a globe on my desk at home. I get globes as gifts. This is prior to the flat Earth guys. To my flat Earth awakening with Mr. Eric Dubé and everybody. But yeah, like I loved the globe. I loved it. I still do. I think it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing. Like a picture of the globe from outer space is gorgeous. Like it's on my phone. I just love the way it looks. I'm intrigued by it. But as soon as somebody
deny it, why do you deny it?
Well, I mean, you know what, man? Like we don't. I go back to this argument. We don't know where we are. We legit don't. We're a species with amnesia. We don't know who we are. How the hell are we supposed to make, just hold a truth that we have no real basis in calling it a truth? It's a globe. Okay. How the hell do you know? It's flat. All right. I'll go down that route. I'll go down the globe route, but don't tell me that it's 100%. Like you just don't freaking know. So I will listen to the flat Earth. And when I sat there and listened to the flat Earth, I was like, this guy makes a lot of freaking sense, and I'm like, okay. So I started taking notes and investigating it on my own and talking to people about it. And most people were just like, they'll give me the regular thing. Well, how does the boat sail around the world? And I was like, hey, they got an answer for that. And they're like, everything. I'm like, anything you can think of, they got an answer for. And it's not a stupid answer. It's a good, intelligent, well-researched answer. These people aren't stupid, and I mean, flat earthers.
Yeah. Well, what do you think that they I mean, flat earthers generally get confronted with you're a moron, you're an idiot, you don't know basic science, you don't know basic physics. I mean, is that your experience?
Well, yeah, man, and that's another thing that just irritates me when people quote science like you don't know basic science. Science is ever changing; it changes every day. You know, there's nothing stable, nothing definite about science. And to say that we as a species, we as humans know science is laughable. Laughable to think that we know what science is. We're not even close. Not even close to what our ancestors did, in my opinion. We have no idea what the hell we're screwing around with. We make nuclear bombs. We're messing around with artificial intelligence, with CERN, all this nonsense. And they're like, look how advanced we are. We're not advanced. We're 4-year-olds playing with fire.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing. It's crazy. It's crazy. So when people talk about science, you don't know science. I'm like, man, neither do you, bro. And that's one of, go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, do you believe the nuclear sort of nuclear bombs and nuclear holocausts and hoaxes and?
Well, do I believe they happened? Is that what you're telling me?
I mean, do you believe nuclear bombs exist, or is it something that you've only seen as a child that's been pummeled into your head with the mushroom cloud and dive under the seat?
Man, I've never questioned whether or not nuclear bombs actually exist. I've never questioned it, so this is new to me.
Let me say this, Billy Ray.
Stuff you've got to say, mate.
Go back and look at the footage of the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Go back and study it with that critical eye and see if it doesn't look like two images sort of superimposed or just using perspective to make it look like one big giant cloud.
All right, can you guys legit speak on this? Can
we can link you to it? Yeah.
No. I want to do an infinite fringe on nuclear bombs, and I'll be straight up with you. I know nothing about this. You guys are gonna have to put me on. But if you guys are confident enough that you can speak to it for about an hour, you guys can come on whenever to record. And I mean, I have a bunch of episodes in the bag, so it won't be a month until it's released or something like that. But
well, check out a guy called Galen. Anyone got his name?
Galen Ross?
No, that sounds familiar. Name.
I know who you're talking about, John. I'm going to look. Give me a minute.
Yeah, it's easy enough to dig up. There's a ton of stuff. Some of the way is he the guy that describes the way it's photographed, the way they do the mushroom clouds and the
right. Looks like
he was a nuclear engineer.
Sunlight.
Does he say it's a firebomb too instead of a nuclear bomb? It's like a big fire explosion. Yeah.
Galen Winsor is his name. GalenWinsor. Galen Winsor. Look up the nuclear scare scam. It's really good.
You guys legit, wow. Okay, this is great because I don't know anything about this, and this is beautiful.
We won't talk about whether or not North Korea is right yet, but maybe for next week.
I wouldn't say I disbelieve. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't say I disbelieve. I think I'm looking into it, and there's a lot of evidence I've seen that certainly really shreds the credibility of what was shown in terms of nuclear bomb usage at the end of World War II. And really starts to grow credibility to what we all believe were the tests we shown on old footage and matchstick houses blowing up. If you watch them, the credibility of those is just not even real anymore.
All right, so here's stupid question number one, and I say stupid question because it's the equivalent of why do ships sail around the world?
Where's the edge?
Yeah, so here's stupid question number one. Don't crucify me for this, guys. Okay.
We won't.
What happened? What happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki? There were people really affected by something, right? Or was that a hoax too?
No, I think
like a carpet bomb in there, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was that?
Sorry.
Have you go and look at a picture of? I'll say one quick thing. Look at a picture of Germany after we went over it. Dresden. Look at Dresden.
All right.
I think the thing about Nagasaki and Hiroshima was that we've been shown a lot of propaganda about it. There is a museum in Nagasaki, I think, that has an enormous fireball that is shown on a documentary coming out of the BBC or CBS or wherever the hell it is. And that picture is a firestorm that happened several years before Hiroshima or Nagasaki was bombed. There's a sort of prominent scientist that came out that said that there is no way that you can produce a nuclear bomb environment until certain things are lined up in the whatever it is in the atmosphere, like the sun's position and the moon's position and all this sort of thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to ask yourself what proof you have of a nuclear bomb ever existing. And I'll guarantee that none of us on this panel have any personal experience of nuclear bombs. So if you start from there, then, it's like satellites. You have no tangible proof of a satellite. So start from there, show me tangible proof, i.e. show me tangible proof of a nuclear bomb. And like Adam said, you've got models being blown up, basically. So take it from there, and you're well on your way down a rabbit hole.
My other disappointment, John, was I started to, like I say, I can't say yes, no, whatever. I've started to look at the excuse me, the physics of it, which is there. So I had a little look at nuclear power stations, and I'm thinking, there must be, splitting stuff in a controlled way. So you never looked at it, you assume it. What they're doing, taking atoms, must be mini nuclear bombs, and they're taking the power. They're not. They're just like annoying the fuck out of it with in a radioactive way to heat up water to turn a steam
water.
Turbine.
That's it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. To turn a turbine. It's not nuclear power in the sense that we're told and we understand it, that they, Homer Simpson's there with his. Do you know what I mean? It's not. It's just a big kettle.
Yeah, it's a way of heating water up and running it through a turbine and generating electricity. There's nothing, amazing about it other than it costs you and I billions, as opposed to, burning a bit of coal and heating up some water and doing exactly the same thing.
And all the fake in terms of the TV stuff, the 10, 50 miles away footage that we see. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of the descriptions of what we're told. I think there's some shadows of people on steps that were going to the bank that day and stuff, and it's apparently slightly stained a different colour because of the blood in them and stuff. It's described as, and you think, fuck off, mate. That's just been vaporized. What did they paint? Do you know what I mean? The descriptions now, 30, 40 years after they made them up, start to show for the outdated science that that it is. Do you know what I mean? And that's the discrepancy you can see in the mainstream.
And for me, it was kind of like the same thing going back and watching the old moonshots. I went back and watched the old Atomic Cafe and all the old documentaries about all these explosions, and I watched it with an eye of 40 plus years of watching every behind the scenes of how every movie that I love has been made. I love filming. I love all the techniques used in filming and special effects, practical effects, in-camera effects. Watch that stuff with that eye now, and it looks just like some simple in-camera tricks that you could do. I could set it up here and do it today,
Yeah.
with our computer.
So what do you think then, Billy? Is this all news to you?
Yeah, man. I can't say that I knew about this before, which is good because it gives me something else to go down. No, I never even bothered to question that. I feel like and this is my not very educated point of view. I feel like humans can do this, and I feel like humans are stupid enough to screw it up too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did do it and completely screwed it up. It wouldn't surprise me. But I also wouldn't be surprised if it was a giant hoax.
I just want to add my 2 cents to the nuclear thing. Remember, folks, it doesn't matter at all. They can level you. They can level your city with a non-nuclear bomb, and you're red mist and dead and gone in 60 seconds or less. So it doesn't matter. Nukes is like a red herring. They can kill you regardless, nuke or not.
James, the other herring that I think for it is who invented the nuclear bomb and felt very remorseful for it. Was Einstein, wasn't it?
I am become death.
Oppenheimer, Crowley, Einstein, Parsons, the whole little group of fun men.
It's also well scripted, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's
very well crafted.
Yeah.
So,
hey boys, I'm gonna jump off. I actually got a wrestling interview to do tonight. Not an interview, but a prediction show for a pay-per-view that's coming on tomorrow on Sunday, which is awful. But I gotta jump off. But if you guys will have me back, I'll come back at some point, man. I had a blast talking with you guys.
Anytime, sir.
Very cool.
Bring Ben Hameen next time you come. We'd love to talk to him.
I'm gonna tell him, man. If he has some time, I'll bring him with you. I think he works nights, but I'm sure he'll come. So
we can make things work out. We'll make things work out.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell him. I'm gonna hit him up right now and let him know. What time are you guys gonna go to tonight?
Who knows?
We will.
We're about done.
I envision at least another hour. Yeah, we'll hit. We have a little segment we call the Fringe, just like the last little hour, and we'll kind of open it up and let anybody who's in chat or anybody who's out there want to hop on with us, and we'll chat with them for a little bit. So we'll probably do that for another hour.
I'll tell you what, if I could hop back on later, I will.
Absolutely, brother.
But I had a blast. Thank you guys so much for having me on, man. I appreciate you guys.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming on, Billy Ray. It was a great time.
All right,
give everybody your shout outs again and your information on how to find you again before you leave.
Yeah, man. You know, podcast is The Infinite Fringe. The Infinite Fringe. It's the whole thing. The Infinite Fringe. You can find it on Podbeam. So it's theinfinitefringe.podbeam.com. You could go on iTunes. It's there. Subscribe on iTunes. I'd appreciate a subscription. Also, I'm working on a couple of things. It's not 100 yet, but I may be on Truth Frequency Radio doing a live show there on Saturdays, most likely. I would say it's about 95% right now, and I have, of course, that 5% can hit and it can go astray. So I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket right now, but I would love to do it. So it looks like it's gonna happen, and if it happens, I'm on there. Nice. So stay tuned to my Twitter at Obi-Wan. You know me. I do wrestling stuff there if you're into the wrestling stuff. And of course, you know, I try to stay up on all the political, all the conspiracy, all the fringe. So come visit me, man. Give me a follow. I'm not on there all the time, but whenever I am, I tweet out something worth watching if you're a wrestling fan, and worth reading if you are into the know or hashtag woke. What's up to all my people out there, all my woke people, all my flat earthers, all my math geeks, you know, everybody. I love you guys. All right, take it easy now.
Thanks, Billy Ray.
Nice to meet you,
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.
See you, man.
Billy Ray Valentine. Good stuff.
Nice.
Good stuff.
That was fun.
That was fun.
Oh, I just looked at my screen. I meant to read this while he was here, and I forgot. I brought it up. Oh, well, maybe I shouldn't. I might get a copyright issue. Anyway, B.O.B. in one of his lyrics from one of his raps talks about wrestling in connection to the world picture and the conspiracy therein. And I just thought it was kind of interesting with what we've been talking about and the wrestling tie-in, but I'll throw it out there real quick. I used to think, what would Hova do? Now I think, what the heck would Macho Man and Hulk Hogan do? Now, if Steve Austin was America and The Rock was Afghanistan, then Russia and China would be Triple H and the Illuminati would be Vince McMahon. Now, when the haters are the Undertaker, the crowd doesn't stand a chance when the international bankers are walking through the stands. Slide your ass some Zan. You just think you're a fan, but you're really just a lamb. Anyway, sorry. Just thought that was an interesting little tie into the wrestling thing.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
You gonna give us the hook?
I just thought I'd have read.
No, I was going to, but I'm a little too Caucasian for that.
How about you spit me 16 bars off the top?
Plus, if I do it the right way, then I might actually get the copyright strike.
Yep. He won't remember doing this show. Well, that's me, damn it.
That was a good show. I enjoyed that. There's a room in the panel, whatever it is, panel chat. I'm going to end this streaming live video now.
I think I'm about to.
I think we just dropped the invite into the chat actually right now. Looks like Josh just did it.
I did. Should probably do it to Twitter too. See if anybody out there wants to hop on in Twitterverse.
Okay, where are you banging the chat?
On the IRM view page for the live stream.
Holy. Okay. Well, I opened a chat room, banged it in the IRM panel room, but you can probably ignore that one. But if you can bang your other chat room in the panel room, cool.
All right. Well,
that was cool. That was a really good interview. We're not live anymore.
Oh, of course we're still live. We're getting ready to go into the Fringe, John. We still got people coming on, hopefully.
Yeah, it's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning here.
Yeah, it's a shame Billy Ray couldn't get here earlier. But it'd be nice if he could get here again later. So there's always that.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, you guys are going to have to keep talking till then because I'm going to have to hit the sack, man. I'm done for. So it's been a late one tonight, but well worth it. I think it was.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, really cool. Really sound bloke.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah, I think big things are coming for both he and us.
Yeah. Got to brush up on your nuclear theory as well, Josh.
Well, it's interesting. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, used to work for the Department of Energy. That's about the extent that we could ever get out of him because most of his work was classified. He lived in Albuquerque. He went to work for a pretty big private company after that. I wish I could remember sand. I don't know. It'll come to me. So right after Fukushima, I was, putting out there the levels and stuff of radiation going up. And he's older now. He's pretty well alcoholic, confined to a wheelchair, just sort of expediting his own death. But at the time, he would tell me how stupid I was for thinking any of this Fukushima fear porn was real, and I don't even understand radiation, and I don't understand any of this. So it was, I don't know. I mean, again, he is only, he's confined to the knowledge that's given him unless he's willing to step outside of that knowledge. And granted, I come from pretty good genes. These are long lines of that silly group. What is it? Mensa. These are all lifelong Mensa members and pride themselves in their intelligence, and it's sort of part of their identity is just trying to be smart. So I do see that they have those blinders on. So they tend not to question the things that they're told or the education that they've bought. So there's that. So I mean, but from what I've seen, as far as the videos and the things that they're telling the public, again, it's just like everything else. What do I know? Not much. Other than it sure looks like they're fucking lying to us. What they're telling us doesn't appear to be true. It looks like they're just feeding us a bunch of bullshit, and 98% of the people are buying it.
Yeah, I think that'd be my standpoint, mate. That'd be my standpoint. It's nonsense what you're showing me again, isn't it?
I'll go along with that.
So I tend not to want to invest a lot of time trying to become a nuclear energy expert.
So the bombs that we see that were tested, just before World War II, where the big flash and the big was it the heat wave or the shock wave that comes through and wipes out the little cities and all that? That's just huge bombs. It's not actually nuclear.
Well, think about how they qualify the size of their bombs. I mean, they're measured in kilotons, because that's to create an exact identical explosion this big, you need this many pounds of TNT dynamite to blow up to equal the same thing. So it's 14 kilotons. So how do they know this? Well, they have guys in the army spend 3 days stacking up 14 kilotons worth of dynamite. Everybody jumps back 3 miles and they blow it up. And guess what the fuck that looks like?
Big mushroom cloud.
A big fucking mushroom cloud. A big white flash and a shockwave. Yep.
Big shockwave. Thank you.
That's what 14 kilotons of TNT looks like. So when they show you and say this is a 14 kiloton nuclear bomb, we say this because we know that's what 14 kilotons of dynamite looks like. But that's not what we're showing you. Trust us.
So you're saying that the bombs that they're dropping out of a plane hold 14 tons of TNT.
No, I'm saying it's done all through cut scenes. So you show a plane drop a bomb. I mean, maybe it's an empty fucking tin can. You cut to a scene of 14 kilotons of dynamite blowing up. Then you cut to a scene of a model house being blown over. Then you cut to a scene of some trees blowing in the wind with the dust coming off of them. And you
all in a line.
Right now you splice them all together and you premise the whole thing with, we just killed a bunch of people. Here's this true and honest footage. Please trust us, we're your government. And again, 98% of the people will watch each individual scene and only see it as a whole. And
just to make sure it locks in the fear,
go ahead.
Here's some burn up people to add.
Yeah. And make us feel bad about it years later, like the Holocaust. They'll tell us we're monsters, bastards for dropping that thing. That doesn't even exist. That probably no one died. Not many.
You just explained that very well there, Josh. That should be soundbited.
Amen.
Yep.
I couldn't have said it any better.
That's brilliant.
I read your blog, John. I bet you could.
Rob, if you'd managed to survive a nuclear explosion, would you build your house in the same place? Didn't you know what I mean? You wouldn't build a city on top of where they got to
where
know.
I live in a Defence Force town. I've got the Navy and the Army here. Big army base. Big army base. It's one of the biggest in Australia. It's about 10 kilometers away from me.
And really, what are the odds a human being gets hit by a nuclear explosion? They're pretty fucking small. What are the chances you're going to get hit twice? I mean, infinitesimal.
I've always been under the assumption that we would be targeted because, if there was a real war, then we would be targeted.
Of course.
You know, we've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's how I used to feel up in Shreveport because of Barstow Air Force Base there. We always thought if something happened, we would be the first ones to go to.
Welcome to the media. People on the East Coast,
Yeah.
they're told they're going to be the first. People on the West Coast, they're going to be the first. People in the middle, they're going to be the first. You tell everybody they're going to be the first.
I've never heard anyone actually say that. Not here anyway. That's just an assumption that I make. I mean, that'd be just a strategy, wouldn't it? If you're an enemy, that's what you're going to target. So no, I've never really heard anyone say that before.
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean you. I meant if you were in Japan and you'd managed to survive the nuclear explosion, where are you going to rebuild a city? A place that's ridden with nuclear waste, right? Or somewhere up the coast where a bomb's not just been dropped. That's not wiped. Do you know what I mean? It just that's another thing that makes me question: was it really nuclear, that explosion there? Because why would you? You know, there's a lovely city around that blown up church.
Look at Chernobyl.
That was my next question.
Exactly. What's at Chernobyl now? Is it a dead waste? Nothing growing. Top Gear are fucking everywhere. They were in Antarctic for crying out loud. They're a bunch of
BBC Health and Safety
social engineering, BBC fucking puppets. Sorry.
My point being, if there was any radiation there, they wouldn't have been allowed to go there.
I like what RT said about that whole Chernobyl, that it wasn't actually anything nuclear at all, but instead it was one of the 1 million watt generators that could actually send a signal and listen to the US and Britain. So they bombed the low-level nuclear facility to draw, but they really actually blew the radio transmitter in Chernobyl. Have you guys heard that?
That does sound vaguely familiar, but far more believable.
Either way, there is growth everywhere. There's stuff growing all around there. That shouldn't be the case if it was nuked, correct?
Yeah, like you say,
or whatever radiation. Or
I was gonna ask Billy Ray. I saw Alba Gamer asked a while ago, hour and a half by now, about no forests on the flat Earth. I wonder if Billy Ray's at all familiar with this idea of large mountains being giant tree stumps. Sorry, I still can't get that shit out of my mouth without busting up.
I think it actually plays right into the Dave Weiss and the whole theory with the different suns coming through at different times. So a different sun came through at one point, different vibe, different vibration, different frequency. We had giants, we had dragonflies with 3-foot wingspans, we had trees that are now mountains. All that passed. Here comes a flood, here comes a new sun. Now we got some leftover giants living among us, ruling over us as gods or whatever, you know. I don't know. Again, I think it all fits it just like a click. Everything fits into place with this thing as the map goes up on the page here.
Careful not to suffer from the pitchfork or halo effect, Walt. Seriously, I'm just listening to you talk, my brother. I've done it many times myself.
What is the pitchfork and halo effect?
So the pitchfork and halo effect is being overly optimistic of one way or the other. So you're either condemning something with a tail and horns and you can't stand it, or you're putting a halo on it and propping it up and it's the best thing in the world. And it's easy for us as people to do that because we get so emotional and excited and, you know, it sounds and it may feel right. But when we actually stop and think and research it, a lot of the times it's different than what we expected. And I know this firsthand in a real world application. When we run a business and you hire people, it's very easy to put the pitchfork or the halo on them right away without giving them a real chance to prove their scales and their weights, you know? And that's essentially what the pitchfork and the halo is.
Interesting.
Yes. So, Walt, you have a lot of research to do, my friend.
Who's got the ticking clock?
Sorry, you caught me mid-chew. I was trying to catch up on a little snack there. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying we got you, me, all of us, that whole topic, a lot of research it needs to be looked at, for sure. We got a lot of work
It will
to
be.
do.
Don't worry. I'm diving in now.
I don't know about the second sun. I told you last night. I'm not into that, but I'm definitely into the maybe long-term cycle and the movement going in and out. I don't know if you guys caught the by the way, it was a great proof. We should have brought it up earlier. It was the zigzag argument, Odu-PQ. Rob, have you seen that one? Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I have seen that one.
That's had me scratching my head for years now. I've set it up. I've done it on a rotating table with a camera. Yeah, I'm still scratching my head about that one. As I scratching my head about rockets in space.
Mm-hmm.
So do we?
Like no one's joining us, does it?
It doesn't.
No.
Alba Gamer's wife is fast asleep. I guess we're lucky he can listen at all.
We're even here.
There's 15 whole people watching
15 still hanging out. Yep.
Okay. I'll shut up then.
They may be hanging out, guys, but I'm gonna head off. I'm afraid. I'm
You've been saying that for an hour.
Yeah, I'm going definitely this time. I'm
This is the
definitely
real
going to
deal,
go.
huh?
It's been a great show. I really enjoyed it, and I'll
Yes, sir.
catch you in a week.
Take care.
Thanks, Adam. You have a great night. Sleep well. At Larchero Red on Twitter.
James's little singing there was helping me go off already. I'm off. Night, guys.
There we go. Good night, brother.
Sweet dreams.
On Hushabye Mountain.
Alba Gamer's asking a few questions here, but the last one was, John, have you got any new experiments on the horizon?
No.
No. There you go.
No.
Answer.
No, he and Adam are going to build me a gyro drone. Just joking.
I would
Do you
like
think Japan
to build an enormous gyroscope that is guaranteed to be able to pick up the rotation of the Earth. But until that happens, no, I can't see.
What's ginormous? How big is ginormous?
There's something that's guaranteed to register 15 degrees per hour rotation.
You mean it is certified to pick up the 15 degrees?
Yeah.
You know it won't pick up the 15.
You've already proved
No, I want it to be certified to pick up 5 degrees per hour.
No, but what I'm saying is, you said a ginormous one. What does ginormous mean in size? Surely it's not the bigger the better.
With gyroscopes, well, no, it's not necessarily bigger the better, but the faster the rotation, the faster the spin of the rotor, the better, because the stronger the energy that you're creating. So something I would like to see someone build a mechanical gyro, not a ring laser gyro or anything electronic, a mechanical gyro that is certified to register something along the lines of 5 degrees per hour, that we can register the turn of the Earth with. In terms of other experiments,
Do you honestly think that even if you did that, then, because we know it's not going to turn, what would be the next thing that they said? You got one that said it was certified. They would find something else that you did wrong, then, wouldn't they?
Well, at that point, they become irrelevant. they're people that they become deniers themselves. You know, I mean, you're literally denying science at this point. You're denying repeatable, testable, observable, recreatable, falsifiable science, and you're just saying no, it doesn't exist.
Do we know where the world's largest gyroscope currently is, John? Do we have any clue?
I've looked, but no. I mean, from what I can see, gyroscopes get very quiet for obvious reasons, as I now see. But that's what I'd like to see, because the gyroscope is, as numerous people have pointed out, you know, pilots and etc.
Bavaria.
It's the best, the easiest. Bavaria, is it?
Largest ring laser gyroscope.
But that's a ring laser gyroscope.
Yeah.
I mean, CERN could be regarded as a ring laser gyroscope.
I'm going for mechanical now.
Mechanical is what counts, because you can't mess with a mechanical gyroscope. You can mess with a software-based ring laser gyroscope. It has to go through a medium of software, and that software can be controlled. It can be manipulated. You can't manipulate a mechanical gyro. It either shows you the truth or it doesn't.
Speaking of gyros, Walt shared an incredible video about the 3 or 4 gyros that process together and can actually create lift without any rotors or anything.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's really quite interesting, man. Like, yeah, like that was
amazing, wasn't it? How do they explain that one?
I've not seen anything more about it, to be perfectly honest. So I mean, they gave I need more information.
Yeah, I've been digging into it, trying to find more, and there's not much. So either he got shut down, or it wasn't what he thought it was.
Yeah.
Now that drone, on the other hand, they actually have a website that's about to launch. So apparently that's a real thing. They're about to actually.
But that's the same technology, correct?
I looked at that as well.
Similar.
And the page was non-existent, and
yeah, coming soon. That's what it said.
Yeah, coming soon. There was no mention of it. I mean, you know, the footage was astonishing, great, but yeah, not a lot of substance behind it.
I'm gonna keep an eye on it for sure. I'm a drone freak. I'm not seeing many huge drones myself. I mean, not drones, gyros. I'm looking right now online.
It is actually baffling me. I am coming up with 0 when I put in largest mechanical gyroscope or large mechanical gyroscope. Like, what's going on here, man?
Yeah,
welcome
5 inches.
To my
is
world.
That the biggest I'm seeing that works?
You know, this is what I was looking for.
This is crazy.
I thought there'd be a massive gyroscope somewhere.
There would have to be one somewhere, right?
You know, and it'd be spinning, and it'd be showing the turn of the earth, and it would be doing this. But no, I mean, you know, you'd be hard pressed to find a single gyroscope
I'm shocked. I really am.
in a science museum.
Like Foucault's pendulum.
Anyway,
surprised you're not building giant gyroscopes in science class.
Wow, this is an absolute scheme, keyword hiding. Like, this is.
Yeah, keep looking, mate. Keep looking.
No,
you will not find. You will not find.
It's not here.
I mean, you can't even find the original Foucault gyroscope. It's a replica. They lost the original.
Just like the telemetry tapes, eh?
Yeah, funny. Anything of any importance, they seem to, you know, just lose. But yeah, you won't find Foucault's gyroscope. You won't find a photo of it or a diagram of it or anything. It's all replicated
Oh my goodness. I can't find anything. You know what I found? A giant seal with a gyroscope attached to it for navigation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
that's it. You think? I mean, I've got mainstream articles telling us how Foucault's gyroscope shows us how the Earth is spinning. Bish bash bosh, done deal.
Wait. Wait a second. It's done, Walt? Wait till you get to it ends. Google it. Just ends. There's literally like one page scroll width down. Like I haven't been going long. That's the shortest end of results I've ever seen.
Yep. That's it. I'm there.
What the hell kind of supercomputer is that?
They don't like
That's
you
not,
searching
it's not
gyroscope.
D-Wave.
All right, guys, I'm going to bugger off, eh?
All right, Rob.
Yep. All right, then,
Likewise.
Rob.
Cheers.
All right. It's a good show today. Thanks for that.
Cheers, bud. Take it easy.
Absolutely.
Catch up with you shortly.
No worries. See you, Zay. Bye.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good weekend. At Rob Freddy on Twitter.
Oh.
What?
What happened?
I don't know.
I missed it.
I must have missed it too.
I just actually found the biggest gyroscope. I'm about to send you the picture. Hold on.
I know which one you're looking at. That stupid bronze. That looks like the height of those ashtrays from the 70s.
No. Wait, hold on one second. No, this is even better. Hang on.
Where is it? What is it?
What you got?
What you got? This.
You're gonna see. I'm gonna throw it in the hangout. Somebody pop it up.
The biggest gyroscope is the Earth, of course.
Of course.
Well, of course.
In fact, an even bigger gyroscope is the solar system.
Mm.
And then the Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
And the universe.
All right, it should be in the chat there for y'all. I can't present from my setup here, so someone pop into our hangout and throw that up on the screen, and I have now found the biggest gyroscope for you.
Dude, I'm looking. I'm trying to figure out which kind of picture, which one you pulled
Come
here.
on, describe it. We don't need pictures. Just tell us.
No, you really need to see it. You have to see it
No,
to appreciate it.
I'm telling you, it's the little brass one. No.
I don't even see where you put it. Twitter?
It didn't come into the chat room.
Where
with
did
us?
you stick her?
I didn't see it.
Come on, Smalls.
Your Tums. They're betraying you.
It must be like loading through, I guess. I don't know what it's doing.
You gotta hit the send button.
I do.
But you would think
It's a vindictive D-Wave.
every museum, every science museum would have at least one.
Every science classroom too, like Josh said.
Well, I mean, let's just stick with museums at this point. Proles that can imagine getting.
Oh, I see. It's still sending. It's supposed to be a huge picture. My goodness.
Sweet, my sister.
Because I'm seeing it on my hangout, but at the bottom it's still sending. So sorry.
I mean, they got pendulums everywhere. They got pendulums in the UN building. They got pendulums in the cathedrals. They got pendulums all over the place. But you know, a little nice compact.
Message not delivered.
They can't have that. They can't show that. They don't have them in science museums. They're nowhere.
Put the link in there.
Yeah, well, hang on.
Is it the red one? Is it like a red ball from like Running Man styles? Funny. The two-seater. That is really shocking, though. I know I've said it 3 times, but I can't believe how little result. Like, you can find anything with that demonic computer that Google runs. Like, there's hundreds of millions of results. I'm shocked that there's literally one page of gyros.
Are you really?
I am, even though I'm not. But I am, you know. But I'm not.
I think it's pretty obvious why.
Yeah. They're just making them into toys, right? Too now. You just like the spinning toys. Nothing to see here. It's a little fun gimmick.
Well, a gyro is always marketed as a gimmick toy, as an executive toy. You know. gimmick. It never marketed as anything other than that. But these things are what run our attitude indicators, our pitch indicators, our banking indicators, everything. You know, on a plane, on a submarine, on a boat. These are the things that guarantee planes do not fly into the ground or fly off into space. But yeah, they're routinely denied.
Yeah.
The ring laser gyro works on the principles of the Sagnac experiment in 1925, I think it was, which proved the existence of the ether.
Mm-hmm.
And which worked off the Michelson-Morley and the Michelson-Gale experiments, proving that the Earth was stationary and the stars were moving, and the existence of ether is summarily dismissing Einstein's whole career in one fell swoop.
Was he really destroying his career, or was he pulling the curtain back on a Jesuit actor who was propped up to, like, his wife was smarter than him and she was the one that wrote his paper, they say. So
that's it. But,
you know,
he was so threatened by Michelson-Morley and those experiments that was the birthplace of his general relativity and special relativity, to do away with ether, basically. Funny old game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Well, what was I just looking at a thing here on the Haffel-Keating experiment. What do you know about that, Sean? About those guys who were testing that Einstein's thing? Did they get anywhere with it? I'm just kind of browsing it now. I don't know if you guys know anything about it.
The who? Sorry, what?
It was. It's called the Haffel-Keating experiment, and it was a test of the theory of relativity, and they did it in October 1971. Physicist Richard Keating, an astronomer, took four cesium beam atomic clocks aboard commercial airliners. They flew twice around the world, first eastward, then westward, and compared the clocks against others that remained at the United States Naval Observatory. When reunited, the three sets of clocks were found to disagree with one another, and their differences were consistent with the predictions of special and general relativity.
Interesting. No, I haven't heard of that, so I'd have to look into it. Sounds like bullshit from...
It does. Listen to the further, if you guys don't mind me reading.
Go for it.
I don't even know if I'm saying this right. Kinematic time dilation. According to special relativity, the rate of a clock is greatest according to an observer who is at rest with respect to the clock. In a frame of reference in which the clock is not at rest, the clock runs more slowly, as expressed by the Lorentz factor. This effect, called time dilation, has been confirmed in many tests of special relativity, such as the Ives-Stilwell experiment and time dilation of moving particles. Considering the Haffel-Keating experiment in a frame of reference at rest with respect to the center of the Earth, a clock aboard the plane moving eastward in the direction of the Earth's rotation had a greater velocity, resulting in a relative time loss, than one that remained on the ground, while a clock aboard the plane moving westward against the Earth's rotation had a lower velocity than the one on the ground. Yeah, it sounds like absolute bloody hogwash.
I would love to see the practical experiments and results of this.
Yeah, and Adam's gonna love it. There's math, there's nanoseconds, there's like all kinds of equations here that he can rip into. Excellent.
No, seriously though, I mean, you can't say that sort of shit without testing it. And I'd love to see how they test it and what assumptions they're making, and
Well, just the first line, they flew twice around the world, eastward and westward. That then in itself, we know now today is bunk. Where maybe 10 years ago you read it and you're like, oh, they flew around, and that wouldn't even be argued. You just argue the validity of how stupid their experiment was.
Well, this is like Aristotle.
I believe I actually finally got a picture to send. My goodness, I'm sorry it took so long.
I was stalling for so long here.
Too many things open. I just finally had to do it on the phone.
Reboot.
So there's your gyro, John. You build that, and we're all headed out.
Share it in the Hangouts.
In the Hangout, yeah.
You shared it, have you?
Oh, ain't that a son of a bitch? I just closed the whole Hangout. Haha. Sorry, I'm back.
Hello.
Some dipshits can't even share screens.
That'd be us then.
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, well, that might be why I was having such trouble sending it. It was animated.
The biggest gyro in the world.
Oh, yeah, they're going to use that to get to the moon, man. Read up. I mean, come on, you're behind.
Is that where the hotel's going on there?
Oh, my goodness. That's too much. Too much.
How did you find this? It's your subscription to NASA magazine.
That's my special inner NASA connections. You know what I mean?
We know you still got those subscriptions coming in those brown magazines.
Too much. My goodness.
NASA Quarterly.
Momentum Virium. What the hell am I looking at?
I'm trying to figure out. It's called a runner-up. So
yeah, it looks like it's attached to the moon and gyros itself up like that thing that guy built, James.
Yeah.
Back in the
Too
80s.
much, man.
Too much.
Yeah. Again, all the sky-high promises that were made to us throughout all these years with our buddies in the space
Someone
agency.
in the chat said something earlier, probably like 3 hours now, because we've had quite a show, but they said, how long has Richard Branson been going to space? Isn't that reversion? Like, wasn't he going to go in the 90s? And then, now it's like 20, 30. He'll be a grandfather. Maybe his ashes will get there.
That's it. He's the one headed to the sun, right?
To Mars. And beyond. Mars is really like the largest landmass, like the first stop outside the ice ring. It's like a beautiful tropical
exactly,
place called
right.
Mars.
It's right over there.
Awesome.
Balmy beaches.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Triple the oxygen.
They've got like
you don't even know you could grow so big, all your illnesses go away. It's like prehistoric oxygen levels.
They've got gophers and chickens running around. It's beautiful.
That's where what's his name? That crook from Canada filmed that phony movie about the virtual reality world. You know, James Cameron, Avatar.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
On that note, guys, I'm gonna have to do a runner.
I may actually be heading out myself. It's been a long show. Legal?
Yeah, it's still legal in my country. It's 3:30 in the morning, so yeah, I will bid you farewell. Have a good night. It's been a blinder. Really good.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, John. Take care, brother.
Love you, brother.
Sleep well, John.
Love, brother.
Hushabye Mountain.
So I think I want to go ahead and take this copyright strike just because I think it's worth it.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
So Walt was going through the store the other day and heard a song playing over the intercom. And he played it for me, and I loved it and thought it appropriate to exit on. So I say F the copyright strike. We're going to play it because I think it deserves to be played.
Thank you guys
Thanks
for
for
watching.
sticking with us.
It has.
Absolutely.
It's been a marathon
Thanks,
of a show.
James. Thank you, Billy Ray, for showing up and hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Thanks for all you guys in the chat sticking with us.
That's it, Billy.
All the new guys, all the old guys and ladies. Sorry, not to be sexist. We appreciate you sticking with us through all of this. It's been fun. Same flat time, same flat channel.
Stay flat, folks.
Bouncing back to you, rubber ball, I come bouncing back to you. I'm like a rubber ball, baby, that's all that I am to you.
Bouncy, 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 bouncy.
Just a rubber ball, cause you think you can be true to two.
Bouncy, 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 bouncy.
You bounce my heart around.
You don't even put her down.
And like a rubber ball, I come bouncing back to you. Rubber ball, I come bouncing back to you. If you stretch my love till it's thin enough to tear, I just stretch my arms to reach you anywhere.